Marta was a great traveler and had been to many countries all over the world. Her interest in new impressions and cultures was unstoppable. After several years of dreaming, she finally decided to go to Africa, the continent that has always attracted her with its mystery and wildlife. Marta prepared for the trip carefully. The girl read many books about African nature, culture, and customs. She did everything she needed, vaccinations, and bought special clothes for the Marta Safari. She chose an exotic tour that included visits to several countries in East Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. When the plane landed at Nairobi International Airport, the capital of Kenya, March felt excitement and a slight anxiety. It was her first time in Africa, and she didn't know what to expect here. Leaving the airport, she was immediately struck by the heat and humidity that enveloped her. Martha was greeted by the guide David, a tall, smiling Quine with big eyes. He was an experienced guide who had worked in the tourism industry for over. When he was 15 years old, David greeted Martha warmly and helped her with luggage on the way to the hotel. David told Martha about the local culture and history of Nairobi. He explained that the name of the city comes from the Maasai expression, NCR, Nairobi. What does the place of cold waters mean? Martha was impressed by David's knowledge and his ability to talk about local attractions and animals in a very interesting way. On the first night in Nairobi, Martha woke up to strange noises outside her hotel window. Looking outside, she saw a group of baboons that were digging in garbage cans. One of the Martha noticed them and threateningly smiling. The girl quickly closed the window, but this incident reminded her that she really was in the wilderness of Africa. The next day, the real adventure of March began, and a small group of tourists went by jeep to the Massa Mara National Park from famous reserves in Africa. On the way, they passed through small villages where Marta could observe the daily life of the locals. She was amazed by the bright colors of the traditional clothes and the friendly smiles of the people who waved to the passing jeep. As they pulled into the park territory in front of Martha, had a marvelous view of the endless savanna, golden grasses, swaying in wind, and in the distance, there were groups of wild animals. David explained that they arrived here in the midst of the Great Migration, the annual movement of millions of animals through the Mosa and Mara, in search of fresh grass and water. Suddenly, David braked sharply. Right in front of their jeep, a herd of antelopes was running across the road. The animals were in a panic, and soon it became clear why they were being chased by the 3 hyenas of March. With a sinking heart, I watched this hyena's chase. Caught up with one young wildebeest who had fallen behind the herd, Marta turned away. Unable to look at the cruel hunting scene, David gently explained that this is part of the natural cycle, and hyenas play an important role in the ecosystem. Marta was amazed by what she saw. She watched herds of zebras and wildebeest that grazed peacefully on the plain. Giraffes moved gracefully between sparse acacia trees, plucking leaves from high branches. Elephants bathed in a small lake, splashing water with their trunks. David told Marta about complex social structures of elephants, their stats, and their incredible memory. She was struck to find out that elephants can remember and recognize one another, even after years of separation. On the second day of the safari group, when in search of rarer animals, David skillfully drove the jeep along narrow paths, explaining the features of the landscape and talking about the behavior of the animals. Suddenly, he stopped the car and pointed to the dense thickets. There, almost invisible due to his perfect camouflage, lay a leopard. Martha held her breath, watching this magnificent leopard. It seemed did not pay attention to them. Lazily sipping on the branches of the tree, David told them that the leopards are one of the most secretive cats, and seeing them in the wild is an excellent luck. In the late afternoon, the group camped on a picturesque hill to watch the sunset. David shared with them that this place is called the Maasai Spear due to its characteristic shape. When the sun started to set beyond the horizon, the sky was painted in incredible shades of orange and purple. Marta felt this was one of the most stunning sunsets she had ever seen. Thus, she took her camera and snapped a few pictures. She was trying to capture this magical atmosphere. At night in the camp, Martha could not sleep for a long time. She came out of her tent and froze with surprise. The sky was strewn with millions of stars, bright and close, the likes of which she had never seen in the city. The Milky Way stretched across the sky like a silvery ribbon. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the distant roar of the Lion of March, shuddering. But she was not frightened. She felt like a small part of this huge, wild world. On the third day of the safari, an unexpected event happened when the group watched the Pride of Lviv. Their jeep suddenly stalled. David tried to start the engine, but he couldn't. He explained that there was probably a problem with the fuel pump, and they would have to wait for help. Only a few hundred meters away were the lions, which made for a tense situation. David reassured them all by saying that the lions take absolutely no interest in people inside cars because they just perceive them as one big, inanimate object. He nonetheless asked everyone to remain in the jeep, not to make any abrupt movements. Martha felt her heart beating, everything faster and faster, watching the wild predators that didn't seem to pay any attention to them. Lionesses were resting in the shadow, and young lion cubs and mane wrestled with each other. The tourists waited for help. One of the lions was still interested in their jeep, the biggest predator of the pride, it seems, and the leader of the lions slowly came closer, sniffed carefully. Marta held her breath. The lion walked around the car, stopped for a moment, and looked straight at the people inside. His amber eyes seemed to look straight into Marta's soul. She felt a mixture of fear and awe of this majestic predator. Finally, the leader took one last hard look at Martha, after which he lost interest and returned to his prey. Martha exhaled and realized that all this time, she had been sitting with bated breath. After the lion returned to prey, the predators finally stopped paying any more attention to the jeep. They were very happy and composed. The technical assistants arrived, and they could continue their journey. However, this incident left a deep mark upon Martha's soul. The next day, the group went for a walk along the savanna on foot, accompanied by armed rangers. During a walk, the curious Martha managed to lag behind the group, fascinated by the beauty of the wildflower. She wanted to take some photos and did not notice how the group had gone far ahead. When Martha realized that she was left alone, she was seized by a real panic. She tried to catch up with the group, but in the monotonous landscape of the savannah, she quickly lost her orientation. The sun was scorching mercilessly, and soon Martha began to feel tired and thirsty. She decided to find shelter from the suns, wait there for the rangers to find her. Suddenly, Martha heard a rustle in the tall grass of the heart. The girl froze when she saw a huge lion slowly approaching her. It seemed to be the same huge lion she had seen yesterday near the jeep. Only now on the ground, he looked truly majestic and formidable. Martha, barely holding back the cry of horror, knelt down and tried to crawl unnoticed into the nearest bushes. But the predator quickly caught up with her. There the lion roared menacingly, and Martha felt the ground shake at this loud sound. She closed her eyes, waiting the worst, but instead of a fatal blow, something heavy and soft touched her shoulder. She opened her eyes and saw that the lion was touching her softly with his huge paw. She remembered the words of David that she should stay still when facing a predator, and tried not to move at all. The lion circled Martha, sniffing and from time to time touching her with his paw, as to check if she was alive. Martha felt his hot breath on her skin, and she heard the loud beating of her heart. Each second seemed like an eternity. Suddenly, in the distance, others' roar was heard. Martha Lvov thought with horror that in a few minutes, the whole pride would get here, and she would simply be torn to pieces. However, to the girl's amazement, in response, the leader of the lions loudly roared, as if warning other predators to keep their distance. Several lions from the pride, nevertheless, came closer with curiosity, looking at the strange prey of their leader. But the large lion that met Martha again today did not allow them to come closer. The beast took a defensive position next to the girl menacingly, roaring at any Leo who tried to approach him. Marta could not believe what was happening. The leader of the lions, whom she believed to be her murderer, suddenly became her protector. She did not understand why the great wild beast had spared her, but she was infinitely grateful to him for this miracle. Several hours passed, which seemed like an eternity to Marta. She lay motionless, and the lion continued to guard her from his relatives. Finally, in the distance, the sound of approaching jeeps was heard. The lion was alert, but did not move from the place. When the rangers rode up to them almost closely, the lion made the last loud roar and slowly retreated into the Martha was surrounded by a group of anxious hikers and rangers. She was in shock and speechless. She cried nonstop, relieved and grateful. Later on, when Martha finally gained her consciousness, She narrated her amazing experience to the locals and David. No one was able to explain Leo's behavior, and all agreed upon it being a real miracle. This incident had a very strong effect on Martha, since she felt the fragility of her own life and the majesty of nature. In the following years, she would very often remember that amazing Leo who became her by an unlikely angel in the African savanna. This encounter of hers changed her view towards life and nature that was instigated by